What's up, Leafs fans, and welcome to Leafs Digest. Today, I just wanted to hop on here and break down something that I see that happens a lot online. It hasn't been happening too much following last year's playoffs, but as the season gets ready here and people start knocking on Kyle Dubas and what he's done in the offseason, knocking on this team, saying we haven't done enough, one name in particular that seems to surface a lot, he seems to kind of be I don't even know what to call him. Like he's the guy that everyone goes to say that it's his fault and he was the first domino to fall. If he did this, things would have been different here in Toronto. And that would be William Nylander. There's a lot of people out here going for William Nylander's head, basically saying that he's the guy we need to move on from. He's the guy we need to trade. If he wasn't so greedy and selfish, then Matthews and Marner wouldn't have been so inclined to take the contracts that they did, and this team would have been in a different position. He is the one guy on this team who constantly gets slandered, no matter what he does, no matter what kind of points he puts up, and I don't think people are taking a good enough look at his numbers here. So really, I wanted to break down if William Nylander deserves more respect around the NHL, more respect from this Leafs fan base, whatever the case may be. Does William Nylander deserve more respect? In order to answer this question best, it's easy to look at certain things that he's done and say, oh, here's this is good, blah, blah, blah. But I think the biggest thing that people pinpoint is his contract, how much money he signed for, the term that he signed for, and kind of the situation that went down with him holding out. The first thing I want to get off my chest here, just right away before I even dig too deep into this, is that no player should ever be criticized for holding out on a contract. Every single player, I don't care what sport it is. I don't care that in hockey, the entire mantra is to be one with the team and to take cuts and blah, blah, blah. If you in your every single day job had an opportunity to go and get the most money that you could while staying in an organization or staying in a franchise, whatever the case may be, staying in a job position that you think you can excel at, have a chance to succeed in, and a chance to win, and you think that you are being disrespected by the amount of money that you're being offered or by the amount of money you're being paid, you yourself would not stick around in that situation. You'd likely find a way to negotiate, to hold out, to not show up to work, to find a new job if you were not going to be paid the amount of money you felt that you deserve to be paid. Everyone deserves to be paid what they feel like or what they are deserved to be paid. Everyone has their dollar amount. Clearly, William Nylander and his agent had that amount, and him and Kyle Dubas were able to agree on a number. Now, it's fine to say, oh, well, he was demanding this much money, blah, blah, blah. It's a business. There's negotiations. There's contracts that have to be sorted out, and there's different tactics to do that, whether it be through demanding a significantly higher number than you actually believe you're worth so that you can actually get down to the number that you do know that you're worth and reach that number at a certain point. Because if you come in hot and you just say, oh, I wanted 6.9, Dubas may lowball you with 3.5, and then you're going to be working towards a $5.7 million contract. Who knows? Maybe he's shooting that number way up there just to get down to this number he truly felt that he deserved at. There's negotiation everywhere. Nobody really knows what the case is. It's not his fault. Let's be honest. Let's start with that. It's not his fault. He should not be taking any sort of blame for holding out that contract and fighting for the amount of money that he believed he was worth, because he has every right to do that. It's professional sports. It's a business. Yes, it's a game, but it's also a profession. It's his life. It's his career. He deserves to be making the amount of money that he feels he's worth. So, moving on from that, I think the best way to break this down is to break down contract comparables around the NHL. So I've gone ahead here and put together some interesting stats about the top 5 player comparables. These stats are all taken from Cap Friendly, put together. All the numbers here are taken from Cap Friendly. The top 5 player comparables, or contract comparables, that is, in the NHL right now. I'm going to list through some of these guys. So David Pastrnak, Kyle Connor, Johnny Gaudreau, Philip Forsberg, and Clayton Keller. These are the top 5 player contracts. And if you go on Cap Friendly, it tells you exactly how comparable the contract is in a percentage base based on a whole bunch of things. The year they signed, the age they are, the length of the contract, position, cap hit, money amount, what years they're signed for, etc., etc. But I took some of the key points here and just wanted to break this down. So one of the most important things I found here is that every single one of these guys signed at age either 21 or 22, in that ballpark. It really just depends on when they actually ended up starting in the NHL and starting their entry-level contracts, because they all signed as RFAs, every single one of these guys. Now, the next thing here is that the length of term. William Nylander is tied for the lowest amount of term on his contract, which pretty much states like this guy did not come out here and say he wanted a short term and he wanted to be out of here and that was it. And it also didn't indicate he was looking to lock up a crazy amount of money over an 8-year period or whatever. He slotted in at the same as Pasternak, same as Johnny Gaudreau, and same as Philip Forsberg. He's 1 year less than Kyle Connor and 2 years less than Clayton Keller, actually. The next thing here is every single one of these guys, winger. They're all wingers. So across the board here, wingers, you can obviously tell they're going to demand a certain kind of money. Now, the cap hit, the percentage of the cap hit is a very interesting one because it's easy to look at the dollar amount that he signed for and say, what the hell was he doing? Well, William Nylander is tied for the second lowest cap hit of all these guys that he signed with. David Pasternak takes more of a cap hit than William Nylander. I understand that the money situation is different, and you look at there and you say David Pasternak is a better player. I hands down agree with that. He's better than William Nylander. There's no denying it. But 8.89% of the cap is higher than William Nylander's 8.76. Kyle Connor, exact same percentage, 8.76. Johnny Gaudreau, 9.25% of the cap at the time that he signed. Johnny Gaudreau, 9.25% of the cap, significantly higher than William Nylander's 8.76. And then you quickly go to Philip Forsberg, 8.22, that's lower. Clayton Keller, 8.77, 0.01% higher than William Nylander's cap percentage hit. Regardless, Clayton Keller still higher cap hit than William Nylander, percentage-wise. Now, the AAV is an interesting one to look at here because William Nylander is the third lowest cap hit here of these 6 guys. If you group him into there, obviously you got Pasternak below him, 6.66, and William Nylander obviously at 6.96, and then below him as well is Johnny Gaudreau, 6.75, and then Philip Forsberg at 6. The guys that come in higher, Kyle Connor, 7.14, and Clayton Keller, 7.15. So these statistics, take them for what they're worth. They're just interesting numbers to really look at and compare. But in terms of cap percentage and the money that was taken, William Nylander, compared to these guys, didn't demand an insane amount. And gonna get into his statistics here compared to the other guys, but like for a guy to slot in amongst some of the top wingers in the NHL and pull contracts very similar to them and still manage to be under $7 million a year, he's a top 6 forward. On majority of the teams in the NHL, he'd be a first-line right winger. He just so happens to be a second-line right winger here in Toronto because he's got Mitch Marner ahead of him. There's not much he can do about that. He was still willing to stay here and play in the system as a second-line guy, albeit not really a second line considering it's a 1A, 1B, and he's playing with John Tavares. Regardless, he's taking less minutes. He's got a guy ahead of him here. He is one of the best right wingers in the entire NHL, and he's slotting in amongst guys whose names, other than really David Pasternak, he kind of either fits in with as the same player, a very equivalent player, or a little bit of a better player here. I can't really say many of these guys. Maybe Kyle Connor, he's worse than. Now, when you go into the stats here, some of the interesting things to look at is before the contract, before these guys signed, it is really interesting to break it down because how much money were they demanding coming out of the seasons or the careers that they had developed for themselves at this point. So David Pasternak, 172 games played, 123 points. You go Kyle Connor, 178, 128 points. Gaudreau, 160 games, 143 points. Forsberg, 182 games, 133 points. And then Clayton Keller, 167 games, 112 points. William Nylander had the second most assists out of any of these guys with 87 assists. The only guy with more assists was Johnny Gaudreau with 88. Yes, William Nylander played more games than he did through that period of time, but still, the only guy with more assists. Now, when you go to the points, Nylander is the second most point getter of all of these guys before he signed his contract. So when you look around the league at player comparables and say, well, you got Johnny Gaudreau, Philip Forsberg, David Pastrnak, Kyle Connor, how can you sit here and say you got more points than all of them except for Johnny Gaudreau, and you don't deserve as much money or close to as much money as the rest of these guys on this list? I understand David Pastrnak ends up being an incredible player, and there's no denying that. Again, back to my point, he is better than William Nylander, no denying that. But coming out of that career that he had developed for himself and going into a contract where you're trying to win right now, it's hard not to give that guy money. It's really, really hard not to give that guy money. 48 goals, 87 assists, 135 points in his first 185 games in the NHL. He's an elite right winger. He's a guy who has incredible vision, which is very underrated, actually, and is a great goal scorer. I don't know what else to say here when you compare these guys at the beginning of their careers and then the money they got after. Now, the next part of this is to look at the production after their contracts. William Nylander's production after his contract hasn't been incredible. That being said, he's had a little bit of a bounce around between playing with Matthews, Tavares, guys going in and out with injuries, moving it through chemistry, different things like that. Not necessarily an excuse. That being said, it is a little bit lower. You go like David Pastrnak, 266 games played after he signed that contract in 2017, 304 points. The guy is incredible. Now you go Kyle Connor, 127 games played after the fact, 123 points. Johnny Gaudreau, 360 games, 351 points. Forsberg, 315 games played, 252 points. And then Clayton Keller, 126 games, 79 points total. 79 points. William Nylander, 173 games played after his contract signed, 128 points. Like this guy, he's not putting up point per game numbers, but he's close to. His career, he's at 0.73 points per game. This is still a top 6, no doubt about it, top 6 forward, an elite right winger in the NHL. And I believe this is a guy, like we forget here, he's only 24 years old. We forget that this guy is not he's not late 20s right now. He signed in 2018. This is a more recent contract that he is still continuing to develop on. Now, compared to these other guys, some of them have put up more points, but he's got significantly more points than Clayton Keller. He's around the same amount of points as Kyle Connor. And then over the projection of the rest of his career or the next few years, he's on pace to be with Johnny Gaudreau, Philip Forsberg. Well, Johnny Gaudreau is a little bit higher ahead, but Philip Forsberg, at the minimum, he's going to be the equivalent or better than. And Philip Forsberg is a guy who is in high demand. He's an elite player in the NHL right now. He's a guy that anyone would love to have on their team. And I don't understand why William Nylander gets so overlooked and so disrespected in that regard. Now, just to focus on William Nylander here, two top things here that stand out from the past 2 seasons. 2019-2020 season, 68 games played, 31 goals. The 2020-21 season, 51 games played, 17 goals. This guy has been 20-plus goals per year, and the last 2 years, he's been on pace to score around 40 goals if the season were played out fullest in 82 games, like 30-plus goals in the last 2 seasons. This guy can obviously score a lot of goals, be a huge factor that way. And then his assists, he's an incredible playmaker, an incredible passer, and people significantly overlook that, which should not be overlooked on a team where you're looking at guys who can score goals and like a guy who can do both. Mitch Marner is primarily looked at as a premier passer. Austin Matthews is primarily looked at as a premier goal scorer. So why are we going to overlook a guy who can kind of do both very well? Not better than Matthews at goal scoring, not better than Marner at passing, but both very, very well. Now, the biggest thing here is his playoff performance. The Leafs Stars have taken huge knocks for their playoff performances or lack thereof performance in the past few years. But when we look at 2017, 18, 19, this guy, 6 games played in his first playoffs, 4 points. Are we looking for this guy to be point per game every single year? Because not every single player in the NHL is a point per game guy. Not every single player in the NHL, even the ones that are point per game, actually end up going point per game every single year or every single playoff round that they go in. Yes, they'll come close. That obviously keeps their averages up close to point per game, but not everyone does it every single year. So 4 points in 6 games, 4 points in 7 games the next year, 3 points in 7 games, a poor year that year. But then you go the last 2 playoff rounds, 5 games played, 4 points, and then this past season, 7 games played, 8 points. This guy is obviously learning how to play in the playoffs, learning how to become a better dynamic player, a better all-around player, a guy who can actually be a contributor to the team in much more significant ways. And I think the William Nylander slander needs to stop. This guy needs more respect. He deserves more respect, not just from the NHL, but from Leafs fans specifically. Leafs fans need to stop absolutely harping on this guy just because he is Swedish and he makes the game look easy and he's skilled and blah, blah, blah. Who cares? He scores goals, he gets assists, he's high point production, and his contract comparable is not a killer compared to everyone else. His contract is actually extremely, extremely good value for what he does and what he contributes to this team. And after seeing what he did in the playoffs these past 2 seasons, I am much higher on the William Nylander train in terms of what he can do during the regular season and now during the playoffs, in that he can actually step up, take over a role, and be a huge impact player. Leafs fans, let's take it easy on William Nylander here. He's a top 6 forward. He's a guy that we would be absolutely drooling over if he hit the free agent market and he was not on our team. He's a guy we'd be demanding we go out here and get and come into our team and help us score goals, help us get assists, help us play on the power play. He's a guy we would be losing it to go out and get. So let's cool it on the William Nylander slander. Let's give the guy some more respect. Leafs fans, I'll see you guys next video. Keep believing.